ॐ भूर्भुवः स्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भृगो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. Namaskar, my dear friend. This is video number 59 on the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna Parmahamsa. This video starts with story of the fish wife and her basket. This is from the appendix A. Master, why must you, my dear sir? Can't you sleep without your fish basket? Once a fish wife was a guest in a gardener's house. She was asked to sleep in a room full of flowers, but she could not get any sleep there or love. She was restless and began to forget about. The gardener called to her, "Hello there, why are not you asleep?" "Oh, I don't know," said the fish wife. "There are flowers here. The smell keeps me awake. Can't you bring me my fish basket?" She sprinkled a little water in the basket, and when she smelled the fish, she fell fast asleep. All laughed nearby. Keshav took a few of the flowers that he had offered at Sri Ramakrishna's feet. On his arrival, he and his Brahmo devotees cried out as the master, "Hail Navavidhan!" Thus they bade him adieu. One day during the rainy season of 1881, Sri Ramakrishna and a number of devotees visited Surendra's house. It was about dusk. The master entered the drawing room on the second floor, where several of Surendra's neighbors had already gathered. Keshav had also been invited but could not come. Trilokya and a few Brahmo devotees were present. A mat covered with a white sheet was spread on the floor, and on it had been placed a beautiful carpet with a cushion. Surendra requested the master to sit on the carpet, but Sri Ramakrishna would not listen to him and sat on the mat next to Mahendra Goswami, one of Surendra's neighbors. Mahendra to the devotees. For several months I spent most of my time with him, meaning Sri Ramakrishna. I have never before seen such a great man. His spiritual moods are not of the ordinary kind. Master to Mahendra, how dare you say that? I am the most insignificant of the insignificant, the lowliest of the lowly. I am the servant of the servants of God. Krishna alone is great, personal God and impersonal reality. Krishna is none other than Sat Chit Ananda, the indivisible Brahma. The water of the ocean looks blue from a distance. Go near it and you will find it colorless. He who is endowed with attributes is also without attributes. The absolute and the relative belong to the same reality. Why is Krishna Tribhanga bent in three places? Because of his love for Radha. That which is Brahma is also Kali, the Adya Shakti, who creates, preserves, and destroys the universe. He who is Krishna is the same as Kali. The root is one, all these are his sport and play. The pure mind sees God. God can be seen, He can be seen through the pure mind and the pure intelligence. Through attachment to woman and gold, the mind becomes impure. The mind is everything. It is like a white cloth just returned from the laundry. It will take any color you dye it with. Knowledge is of the mind and ignorance is also of the mind. When you say that a certain person has become impure, you mean that impurity has colored his mind. Surendra's vanity curbed. Surendra approached the master with a garland and wanted to put it around his neck. But the master took it in his hand and threw it aside. Surendra's pride was wounded and his eyes filled with tears. He went to the west porch and sat with Ram, Manomohan, and the others. In a voice choked with sadness, he said, I am really angry. How can a poor Brahmin know the value of a thing like that? I spent a lot of money for that garland and he refused to accept it. I was unable to control my anger and said that the other garlands were to be given away to the devotees. Now I realize it was all my fault. God cannot be bought with money. He cannot be possessed by a vain person. I have really been vain. Why should he accept my worship? I don't feel like living any more. Tears streamed down his cheeks and over his chest. In the meantime, Tiraloka was singing inside the room. The master began to dance in an ecstasy of joy. He put around his neck the garden that he had thrown aside. Holding it with one hand, he swung it with the other as he danced and sang. Now Surendra's joy was unbounded. The master had accepted his offering. Surendra said to himself, God crushes one's pride, no doubt, but he is also the cherished treasure of the humble and lowly. The master now saying, Behold, the two brothers have come who weep while chanting Hari's name. The brothers who, in return for blows, offer to sinners Hari's love. Behold them, drunk with Hari's love, who make the world drunk as well, embracing everyone as brother, even the outcast shunned by men. Behold, the two brothers have come who once were Kanai and Balai of Braja. Many of the devotees danced with Sri Ramakrishna, sang this song. When the kirtan was over, everyone sat around the master and became engaged in pleasant conversation. Sri Ramakrishna said to Surendra, Won't you give me something to eat? Then he went into the inner apartments where the ladies saluted him. After the meal, Sri Ramakrishna left for Dakshineshwar. Saturday, December 3, 1881. In the afternoon, Sri Ramakrishna paid a visit to his householder disciple Mano Mohan at 23 Simla Streets, Calcutta. It was a small two-story house with a courtyard. The master was seated in the drawing room on the first floor. Ishan of Bhawanipur asked him, Sir, why have you renounced the world? The scriptures extol the householder's life as the best. Master, I don't know much about what is good and what is bad. I do what God makes me do and speak what He makes me speak. Ishan, if everybody renounced the world, they would be acting against God's will. Master, why should everybody renounce? On the other hand, can it be the will of God that all should revel in women and gold like dogs and jackals? As he no other wish, do you know what accords with his will and what is against it? You say that God wants everybody to lead a worldly life, but why don't you see it as God's will when your wife and children die? Why don't you see His will in poverty when you have not a morsel to eat? Maya obstructs vision of God. Maya won't allow us to know the will of God. On account of God's Maya, the unreal appears as real and the real as unreal. The world is unreal. This moment it exists and the next it disappears. But on account of his Maya, it seems to be real. It is only through his Maya that the ego seems to be the doer. Furthermore, on account of this Maya, a man regards his wife and children, his brother and sister, his father and mother, his house and property as his very own. There are two aspects of Maya, Vidya and Avidya. Avidya deludes one with worldliness, and Vidya, wisdom, devotion, and the company of holy men leads one to God. He who has gone beyond Maya through the grace of God views alike both Vidya and Avidya. Worldly life is a life of enjoyment. After all, what is there to enjoy in woman and gold? As soon as a sweet meat has gone down the throat, one doesn't remember whether it tasted sweet or sour. But why should everyone but why should everybody renounce? Renunciation true and false. Is renunciation possible except in the fullness of time? The time for renunciation comes when reaches the limit of enjoyment. Can anybody force himself into renunciation? There is a kind of renunciation known as monkey renunciation. Only small minded people cultivate it. Take the case of a fatherless boy. His poor widowed mother earns her livelihood by spinning. The boy loses his insignificant job and suddenly is seized with a fit of renunciation. He puts on the ochre cloth of a monk and goes to Benares. A few days later, he writes home, I have secured a job for 10 rupees a month. In the meantime, he tries to buy a gold ring and beautiful clothes. How can he stifle his desire for enjoyment? Kesav arrived with some Brahmo devotees and respectfully saluted the master. He took a seat on Sri Ramakrishna's left, Ram on his right. For some time, a reader recited from the Bhagavata and explained the text, God and worldly duties. Master, to the devotees, it is very difficult to do one's duty in the world. If you will run too fast, you feel giddy and faint. But there is no such fear if you hold on to post. Do you do your duty, but do not forget God. You may ask, if worldly life is so difficult, then what is the way? The way is constant practice. At Kamarpur, I have seen the women of the carpenter families flattening rice with a husk machine. They are always fearful of the vessels smashing their fingers, and at the same time they go on nursing their children and bargaining with the customers. They say to the customers, pay us what you owe before you leave. An immoral woman goes on performing her household duties, but all the time her mind dwells on her sweetmeat. But one needs spiritual discipline to acquire such a state of mind. One should pray to God in solitude every now and then. It is possible to perform worldly duties after obtaining love for God. If you try to break a jackfruit, your hands will be smeared with its sticky juice, but that won't happen if beforehand you rub them with oil. The kirtan began. Tarloka was singing. The master danced. Kesav and the other devotees dancing with him. Though it was winter, the master became hot and perspired. After the music, he wanted something to eat. A plate of sweetmeats was sent from the inner apartments. Kesav held the plate before Sri Ramakrishna and the master ate. When he had finished, Kesav poured water on his hands and then dried the master's hand and face with a towel. Afterwards, he began to fan the master. Master to Kesav and the other devotees. They are heroes indeed who can pray to God in the midst of their worldly activities. They are like men who strive for God realization while carrying heavy loads on their heads. Such men are real heroes. You may say that this is extremely difficult, but is there anything, however hard, that cannot be achieved through God's grace? His grace makes even the impossible possible. If a lamp is brought into a room that has been dark 1,000 years, does it illumine the room little by little? The room is lighted all at once. These reassuring words gladdened the hearts of Keshav and the other householder devotees. Keshav to Rajendra Mitra, the uncle of Ram and Manomohan. Would not it be nice if you could arrange a festival like this at your house one day? Rajendra, very good, I will. Well, Ram, you will have to take charge of everything. Sri Ramakrishna was asked to go to the inner apartments where Manomohan's mother had prepared his meal. A glass of ice water, of which the master was very fond, was placed near his plate. Kesab and the other devotees sat in the courtyard and were treated to a sumptuous feast. The master joined them and watched them eat. He danced and sang to entertain the guest. When it was time for Sri Ramakrishna to leave for Dakshineshwar, Kesab and the other devotees took the dust of his feet and saw him off in a hired carriage. Saturday, December 10, 1881. At Kesav's request, Rajendra Mitra arranged a religious festival at his home in Calcutta and invited Sri Ramakrishna and the devotees, including the members of the Brahmo Smas. 2 days before, Aghornath, a prominent member of the Brahmo Smas, had suddenly passed away in Lucknow. Kesab and the other Brahmo devotees were in mourning, and Rajendra thought that they could not possibly join in the festival at his house. This worried him, but Ram, the master's devotee, said to him, "Why are you so sad? If Kesab can't come, let him stay away. Our master will be here. He is always in communion with God. He enables one to see God, and his presence will make the festival a success." Rajendra, accompanied by Ram and few others, paid Kesab a visit to express their condolence for the death of Aghornath. Kesab said to Rajendra, "Why, I have not said I shall not join in the festival at your house. Sri Ramakrishna will be there, so how can I stay away? I am in mourning, it is true, but I shall come." On the wall in Kesav's room hung a picture of Sri Ramakrishna absorbed in Samadhi. Rajendra to Kesav. Many people say that he pointing to the picture is an incarnation of Chaitanya. Kesav, looking at the picture, one does not see such Samadhi. Only men like Christ, Muhammad, and Chaitanya experienced it. About 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Sri Ramakrishna arrived at Manomohan's house. He rested there a while and had some refreshments. Surendra took the master in a carriage to the studio of the Bengal photographer. The art of photography was explained to him, and he was shown how glass covered with silver nitrate takes the image. As the master was being photographed, he went into Samadhi. A little later, Sri Ramakrishna arrived at Rajendra Mitra's house. Kesab had not yet come, and Mahendra Goswami was reading from the Bhagavata. The master conversed with the devotees. "Master, why should not one be able to lead a spiritual life in the world? But it is extremely difficult. While coming here, I passed over the bridge at Bagh Bazar. How many chains it is tied with. Nothing will happen if one chain is broken, for there are so many others to keep it in place. Just so there are many ties on a worldly man. There is no way for him to get rid of them except through the grace of God. One need not be afraid of the world after one has had the vision of God. Both Vidya and Avidya exist in his Maya, but one becomes indifferent to them after realizing God. One understands it rightly after attaining the state of a Paramahamsa. Only a swan can discard the water and drink the milk from a mixture of milk and water. A robin cannot do so. faith in the Guru, a devotee, then what is the way for a householder, master? Faith in the Guru's words. You should depend on his instruction. Do your duties in the world, holding fast to his words, like a person whirling round and holding fast to a pillar. One must not look on one's Guru as a mere human being. It is Satchitananda himself who appears as the Guru. When the disciple has the vision of the Ishta, through the Guru's grace he finds the Guru merging in him. What can one not achieve through simple faith? Once there was an Annaprasana ceremony in a Guru's house. His disciples volunteered according to their powers to supply the different articles of food. He had one disciple, a very poor widow who owned a cow. She milked it and brought the Guru a jar of milk. He had thought she would take charge of all the milk and curd for the festival. Angry at her poor offering, he threw the milk away and said to her, "Go and drown yourself." The widow accepted this as his command and went to the river to drown herself. But God was pleased with her guileless faith, and appearing before her said, "Take this pot of curd, you will never be able to empty it. The more curd you pour out, the more will come from the pot. This will satisfy your teacher." The Guru was speechless with amazement when the pot was given to him. After hearing from the widow the story of the pot, he went to the river, saying to her, "I shall drown myself if you cannot show God to me." God appeared then and there, but the Guru could not see him. Addressing God, the widow said, "If my teacher gives up his body because thou dost not reveal thyself to him, then I too shall die." So God appeared to the Guru, but only once. Now you see, because of faith in her Guru, the disciple herself had the vision of God and also showed, showed him to her teacher. Therefore I say, even though my Guru frequents a grog shop, still to me he is the embodiment of eternal bliss. All want to be the Guru, but very few indeed want to be the disciple. But you know that rainwater does not collect on a high mound, it collects in low land in a hollow. Parable of Pearl Austere. One should have faith in the holy name given by the Guru and with it practice spiritual discipline. It is said that the pearl austere makes itself ready for the rain that falls when the star Swati is in the ascendant. Taking a drop of that rain, it dives into the fathomless depths of the ocean and remains there until the pearl is formed. At the sight of many Brahmo devotees assembled there, the master said, "Is the meeting of the Brahmos a real devotional gathering or a mere show? It is very good that the Brahmo Samaj holds regular devotion, but one must dive deep. Mere ceremonial worship or lectures are of no avail. One should pray to God that one's attachment to worldly enjoyment may disappear, that one may have pure love for his lotus feet." The elephant has outer tusks and inner grinders as well. The tusks are mere ornaments, but the elephant chews its food with the grinders. The inner enjoyment of women and gold ensures the growth of one's devotion. What will you achieve through mere public lectures? The vulture undoubtedly soars high, but its eyes are fixed on the charnel pit. The rocket undoubtedly shoots up into the sky, but the next moment it falls to the ground. He who has renounced his attachment to worldly enjoyments will remember nothing but God in the hour of death. Otherwise, he will think only of worldly things. Wife, children, house, wealth, name, and fame. Through practice, a bird can be trained to repeat Radha Krishna, but when a cat catches it, it only squawks. Therefore, one should constantly practice the singing of God's name and glories, and meditation and contemplation as well. And further, one should always pray that one's attachment to the world may disappear and one's love for God's lotus feet may grow. Householders devoted to God live in the world like a maid servant who performs her duties for her master but always keeps her mind fixed on her own native village. That is to say, they do their duties in the world, keeping their minds on God. Anyone leading a worldly life is sure to come in contact with its dirt, but a householder who is a true devotee of God lives like the mudfish which, though remaining in the mud, is not stand by it. Brahma and Shakti are identical. One acquires love and devotion quickly by calling on God as Mother. Saying this, the Master sings, high in the heaven of the mother's feet, my mind was soaring like a kite when came a blast of sin's rough wind that drove it swiftly towards the earth. Maya disturbed its even flight by bearing down upon one side, and I could make it rise no more. Entangled in the twisting string of love for children and for wife, alas, my kite was rent in twain. It lost its crest of wisdom soon and downward plunged as I let it go. How could it hope to fly again when all its top was torn away? Though fastened with devotion's cord, it came to grief in playing here. Now Naresh Chandra rues these games of smiles and tears and thinks it better never to have played at all. He sang again, O mother, for Yasoda thou wouldst dance when she called thee her precious blue jewel. Where hast thou hidden that lovely form, O terrible Shama? Dance that was once for me, O mother. Throw down the throw down thy sword and take the flute. Cast off thy garland of heads and wear thy wild flower garland. As Sri Ramakrishna sang, he left his seat and began to dance. The devotees too stood up. Every now and then the master went into samadhi and the devotees gazed at him intently. Dr. Dukari touched the master's eyeballs with his finger to test the genuineness of his samadhi. This disgusted the devotees. When the music and dancing were over, the devotees took their seats. Just then Kesav arrived with some of his Brahmo disciples. Rajendra told him about their great joy in the master's kirtan and requested Trailoka to sing again. Kesav replied, since Sri Ramakrishna has taken his seat, the kirtan will sound flat. Trailoka and the Brahmo devotees sang, chant, O mind, the name of Hari. Sing aloud the name of Hari. Praise Lord Hari's name. And praising Hari's name, O mind, cross the ocean of this world. Hari dwells in earth in water. Hari dwells in fire and air. In sun and moon he dwells. Hari's ever-living presence fills the boundless universe. While preparations were being made to give the guests something to eat, Sri Ramakrishna talked with Keshav, master with a smile. Today I enjoyed very much the machine by which a man's picture is taken. One thing I noticed was that the impression doesn't stay on a bare piece of glass, but it remains when the glass is stained with a black solution. In the same way, mere hearing of spiritual talk does not leave any impression. People forget it soon afterward. But they can retain spiritual instruction if they are stand inside with earnestness and devotion. The master was conducted to the second floor of the house and was asked to sit on a beautiful carpet. The ladies waited on him while he ate his meal. Kesav and the other devotees were also sumptuous fed sumptuously fed. Sunday, January 1, 1882. Sri Ramakrishna arrived with his devotees at the house of Gyan Chaudhary in Calcutta to join the annual festival of the Simla Brahmo Samaj. Kesav, Ram, Manomohan, Balram, Kedar, Narendra, Rakhal, and other devotees were present. Narendra had met the master only a few days before at the temple garden at Dakshineshwar. He used to participate now and then in the worship of the Simla Brahmo Samaj and sing for the congregation. The worship was arranged according to the usual custom of the Samaj. First the scripture was read, then Narendra sang. It was dusk. The devotees made merry. Company of holy men extolled. The master looked at the householder devotees seated around him and said with a smile, why should not it be possible for a householder to give his mind to God? But the truth is that he no longer has his mind with him. If he had it, then he could certainly offer it to God. But alas, the mind has been mortgaged, mortgaged to woman and gold. So it is necessary for him constantly to live in the company of holy men. When he gets back his own mind, then he can devote it to spiritual practice. But first, it is necessary to live constantly with the Guru, wait on him, and enjoy the company of spiritual people. Either he should think of God in solitude day and night, or he should live with holy men. The mind left to itself gradually dries up. Take a jar of water, for instance. If the jar is set aside, the water dries up little by little. But that will not happen if the jar is kept immersed in the Ganges. Concerning the ego, the iron becomes red in the furnace of a smithy. Take it out and it becomes black as before. Therefore, the iron must be heated in the furnace every now and then. Do you know what ignorance means? It is the feeling, this is my house, these are my relatives. I am the doer, and the household affairs go on smoothly because I manage them. But to feel I am the servant of God, His devotee, His son, that is good attitude. The I cannot be effaced altogether. You may explain it away through reasoning, but the next moment it reappears, nobody knows from where. It is like a goat that still bleats faintly and jerks its legs even after its head has been cut off. But the eye that God retains in his devotee after he has seen him is called the ripe eye. It is like a sword turned into gold by touching the philosopher's stone. You cannot hurt anybody with it. Thus the master talked, talked seated in the worship hall, and Keshav and the other devotees listened with rapt attention. It was about 8 o'clock in the evening. The bell rang their time for the worship. Master to Keshav and the others. What is this? I see you have not yet begun your regular worship. Keshav, what further worship do we need? We are having all this. Master, oh no, my dear sir, let the worship be performed according to your custom. Keshav, why? We are getting on very well. At the master's repeated request, Keshav began the worship. In the midst of it, Sri Ramakrishna suddenly stood up and went into Samadhi. The Brahmo devotees sang, chant, O mind, the name of Hari. Sing aloud the name of Hari. Praise Lord Hari's name. And praising Hari's name, O mind, cross the ocean of this world. The master still stood there absorbed in ecstasy. Keshav led him down very carefully from the temple to the courtyard. The music went on. The master danced to the music. The devotees danced around him. After the refreshment, Sri Ramakrishna again talked with Keshav. Soon he began to sing. Keshav sang with the master. The black bee of my mind is drawn in sheer delight to the blue lotus flower of Mother Shama's feet, the blue flower of the feet of Kali, Shiva's consort. Tasteless to the bee are the blossoms of desire. My mother's feet are black, and black too is the bee. Black is made one with black, this much of the mystery. My mortal eyes behold, then hastily retreat. But Kamlakanta's hopes are answered in the end. He swims in the sea of bliss, unmoved by joy or pain. Again they sang, high in the heaven of the mother's feet, my mind was soaring like a kite, when came a blast of sin's rough wind that drove it swiftly toward the earth. Both Keshav and the master were in a state of divine fervor. The other devotees joined them and sang and danced till midnight. The master rested a few minutes and then said to Kesab, "Why did you send me presents when your son was married? What shall I do with them? Take them back." Kesab smiled a little and the master continued, "Why do you write about me in your paper? You cannot make a man great by writing about him in books and magazines. If God makes a man great, then everybody knows about him, even though he lives in a forest. When flowers bloom in the deep woods, the bees find them, but the flies do not. What can men do? Do not look up to him. Man is but a worm. The tongue that praises you today will abuse you tomorrow. I don't want name and fame. May I always remain the humblest of the humble and the lowliest of the lowly." Appendix B. A letter written to M. from the Aswini Kumar Datta. My beloved brother M. 3 days ago, I received the fourth part of the Sri Sri Ramakrishna Katha Amrita sent by you, and today I have finished reading it. You are blessed indeed. What heavenly nectar you have sprinkled all over the country. A long time ago, you wanted me to set down my conversations with the master. Now I shall try to write them for you, but I was not born under the lucky star of an aim that I might jot down the days, the dates, and the hours of my visits with the master and note down correctly all the words uttered by his holy lips. In this letter, I am giving you as many of my experiences I remember. Very likely I shall confuse the events of one day with another, and I have forgotten many things. It was probably during the autumn holiday of 1881 that I met Sri Ramakrishna the first time. I arrived at Dakshineshwar in a country boat, and going up the steps of the landing ghat asked someone where the Paramahamsa was. "There is the Paramahamsa," was the reply. A man was pointed out on the north veranda which faces the garden. He was sitting reclining against a bolster. He wore a black bordered cloth. At the sight of the bolster and the black bordered cloth, I said to myself, "What kind of Paramahamsa is this?" Going nearer, I found him half leaning against the bolster with his hands clasped around his drawn up knees. Then I thought, evidently he is not used to pillows as gentlemen are, so perhaps he is the Paramahamsa. At his right, very near the pillow, sat a gentleman whose name I came to know was Rajendra Lal Mitra, later an assistant secretary to the government of Bengal. A little farther off sat some other. After a few moments, the master said to Rajendra Babu, "See whether Kesav is coming." Evidently, Kesav Sen was expected that day. Someone walked away a few steps and coming back said, "No, he is not." After a brief interval, hearing a sound outside, he said, "Please look once more." Again someone went out and came with the same reply. Then Sri Ramakrishna laughed and said, quoting a popular saying, The leaves rustle outside, and Radha says, "Oh, here comes my sweetheart." Continuing, he said, "You see, Kesav always tantalizes me like this. It is his way." At dusk, Kesab came with his party. Kesab bowed low before the master, touching the ground with his forehead. The master returned his salutations in the same manner. Shortly afterwards, Sri Ramakrishna said in a state of partial consciousness, "Look, he has brought the whole Calcutta crowd. I am supposed to deliver a lecture. I won't do anything of the sort. Do it yourself if you like. Lecturing is none of my business." Still in the ecstatic mood, he said with a divine smile, "I shall eat, drink, and be merry. I shall play and sleep, but I cannot give lectures." As Kesab Babu watched him, he became overpowered with divine emotion. Every now and then he said, "Ah me, ah me." I too watched the master and said to myself, "Can this be pretense? I had never seen anything like it before, and you know how deep my faith is." Coming back from Samadhi, the master said to Kesav, "Once I went to your temple. In the course of your preaching, I heard you say, 'We shall dive into the river of devotion and go straight to the ocean of Satchitananda.'" At once I looked up at the gallery where Kesav's wife and the other ladies were sitting, and thought, "Then what will become of these ladies? You see, Kesav, you are householders. How can you reach the ocean of Satchitananda all at once? You are like a mongoose with a brick tied to its tail. When something frightens it, it runs up the wall and sits in a niche. But how can it stay there any length of time? The brick pulls it down and it falls to the floor with a thud. You may practice a little meditation, but the weight of wife and children will pull you down. You may dive into the river of devotion, but you must come up again. You will alternately dive and come up. How can you dive and disappear once for all?" Kesab Babu said, "Can't a householder ever succeed? What about Maharishi Devendranath Tagore?" Twice or thrice the master repeated softly, "Devendranath Tagore, Devendranath, Devendra," and bowed to him several times. Then he said, "Let me tell you a story. A man used to celebrate the Durga Puja at his house with a great pomp. Gods were sacrificed from sunrise to sunset. But after a few years, the sacrifice was not so imposing. Then someone said to him, 'How is it, sir, that the sacrifice at your place has become such a tame affair?' 'Don't you see,' he said, 'my teeth are gone now. Devendra is now devoted to meditation and contemplation. It is only natural that he should be at his advanced age, but no doubt he is a great man. You see, as long as a man is under Maya's spell, he is like a green coconut. When you scoop out the soft kernel from a green coconut, you cannot help scraping a little of the shell at the same time. But in the case of a ripe and dry coconut, the shell and kernel are separated from each other. When you shake the fruit, you can feel the kernel rattling inside. The man who is freed from Maya is like a ripe and dry coconut. He feels the soul to be separated from the body. They are no longer connected with each other. It is the I that creates all the trouble. Won't this wretched ego ever leave a person? You see a peepal tree growing from the rubbish of a tumble down house. You cut it down today, but tomorrow you find a new sprout shooting up. It is the same with the ego. You may wash 7 times a cup that onions have been kept in, but the wretched smell never leaves it. In the course of the conversation, he said to Keshav, "Well, Keshav, I understand that your Calcutta Babus say that God does not exist. Is that true? A Calcutta Babu wants to climb the stairs. He takes one step, but before taking the next, he cries out, 'Oh, my side,' and drops down unconscious. His relatives rage a hue and cry and send for a doctor. But before the doctor arrives, the man is very likely dead, and people of such stamina say there is no God. After an hour or so, the kirtan began. What I saw then I shall never forget either in this life or in the lives to come. Everybody danced, Kesab included. The master was in the center. All danced around him in a circle. During the dancing, Sri Ramakrishna suddenly stood motionless, transfixed in samadhi. A long time passed this way. After hearing his words and seeing all this, I said to myself, yes, a Paramahamsa indeed. Another day, probably in 1883, I visited the master with a few young men from Sri Rampur. Looking at them, he asked, "Why have they come here?" Myself, "To see you." "Master, what is there to see in me? Why don't they look at the buildings and temples?" Myself, "Sir, they have not come to see those things, they have come to see you." Master, "Ah, then they must be flints. There is fire in them. You may keep a flint under water 1,000 years, but the moment you strike it, sparks come out. They must be of that type, but it will be useless to try to strike fire out of me." At this last remark, we all laughed. I do not recall how, I do not recall now what other things he said to us that day. But it seems to me he told us about the renunciation of women and gold and the impossibility of getting rid of the ego. I visited him another day. When I bowed down to him and took a seat, he said, "Can you bring me some of that stuff? A little sour, a little sweet, that begins to fizz when you push down the cork." Myself, "Lemonade, master, why don't you bring a bottle for me?" I think I brought him a bottle. So far as I remember, I was along with him that day. I asked him a few questions. Myself, "Do you observe caste?" Master, "How can I say yes? I ate curry at Keshav Sen's house. Let me tell you what once happened to me. A man with a long beard brought some ice here, but I did not feel like eating it. A little later, someone brought me a piece of ice from the same man, and I ate it with great relish." You see, caste restrictions fall away of themselves. As coconut and palm trees grow up, the branches drop off of themselves. Caste conventions drop off like that, but don't tear them off as those fools do, meaning the Brahmos. Myself, what do you think of Kesab Babu, master? Oh, he is a saintly man. Myself, and Triloka Babu, master, a fine man, he sings very well. Myself, Shivnath Babu, master, a very good man, but he argues. Myself, what is the difference between a Hindu and a Brahmo? Master, there is not much difference. In the serenade we have here, One flautist plays a single note right along, while another plays various melodies. The Brahmins plays one note as it were. They hold to the formless aspect of God, but the Hindus bring out different melodies. That is to say, they enjoy God in his various aspects. The formless deity and God with form may be likened to water and ice. The water freezes into ice. The ice melts into water through the heat of jnana. Water takes the form of ice through the cooling influence of bhakti. The reality is one. People give it various names. Take the case of a lake with four landing ghats on its four banks. People who draw water at one ghat call it jal, and those who draw it at the second ghat call it pani. At the third ghat they call it water, and at the fourth aqua. But it is one and the same thing, water. I told the master that I had met Achalananda Tirtha Vadhata of Barisal. Master, is not that Ram Kumar of Kotranga? Myself, yes sir. Master, how did you like him? Myself, very much. Master, very well. Whom do you like better, him or me? Myself, oh, can there be any comparison between you two? He is a scholar and erudite person, but are you one? Sri Ramakrishna was a little puzzled at my reply and became silent. A moment later I said, he may be a scholar, but you are full of fun. There is great fun in your company. At this the master laughed and said, well said, right you are. He asked me, have you seen my Panchavati? Myself, yes sir, he told me a little of what he had practiced there, his various religious austerities. He also told me about Nangata. Then I asked him, how can I realize God? Master, you see, he is constantly attracting us as a magnet attracts iron. But the iron cannot come to the magnet if it is covered with dirt. When the dirt is washed away, the iron is instantly drawn to the magnet. Weep for God, and the tears will wash away the dirt from your mind. As I was writing down his words, he remarked, look here, only repeating the word Siddhi will not produce intoxication. You must actually get some hemp, rub it in water, and then drink the solution. Later he said, since you are going to lead a householder's life, create a rose roseate intoxication in your mind with the thought of God. You will be doing your duties, but let that pleasant intoxication remain with you. You cannot, of course, like Sukadeva, be so inebriated with the thought of God that you will lie naked and unconscious. As long as you have to live in the world, give God the power of attorney. Make over all your responsibilities to Him. Let Him do as He likes. Live in the world like a maid servant in a rich man's house. She bathes her master's children, washes them, feeds them, and takes affectionate care of them in many ways, as if they were her own children. But in her heart, she knows very well that they do not belong. They do not belong to her. No sooner is she dismissed than all is over. She has no more relationship with the children. Before breaking open the jackfruit, you should rub your hands with oil in order to protect them from the sticky juice. Likewise, protect yourself with the oil of devotion, then the world will not cling to you and you will not be affected by it. At this time, Sri Ramakrishna has seated on the floor Now he got up and stretched himself on his cot. He said to me, "Fan me a little." I began to fan him and he was silent. After a while he said, "Oh, it is so hot. Why don't you dip the fan in water?" "Oh," I said, "you have your fancies too." The master smiled and drawled out, "And why not?" "Very well," I said, "have you full measure of them?" I cannot express in words how immensely I enjoyed his company that day. The last time I visited him, you have mentioned it in the third part of your book. I had with me the headmaster of our school who had just then graduated. You met him the other day. As soon as Sri Ramakrishna saw him, he asked me, "Whether did you pick him up? He is a fine fellow." Then he continued, "You are a lawyer, you are a very clever. Can you give me a little of your cleverness? The other day your father came here and stayed 3 days. Myself, how did you find him? Master, a nice man, but now and then he talks nonsense. Myself, please help him get over it when you see him next." At this, Sri Ramakrishna smiled a little. Myself, please give us a few instructions. Master, do you know Hirada? Myself, your nephew, I know him only by name. Master, Hirada used to say to me, "Uncle, please don't give out your stock of instructions all at once. Why should you repeat the same thing over and over again?" I would reply, "You fool, what is that to you? These are my words, and if I like, I shall repeat them 100,000 times. You keep quiet." Myself smiling, exactly so. A little later, he sat up on the bed. He repeated Om several times and began to sing a song whose first line is, "Dive deep, O mind, dive deep in the ocean of God's beauty." Hardly had he sung one or two lines when he himself dived deep and was lost in samadhi. When the samadhi was over, he began to pace the room and with both hands pulled up the cloth he was wearing till it reached his waist. One end of it was trailing on the floor and the other was hanging loose. Nudging my companion, I whispered, "See how nicely he wears his cloth." A moment later he threw away the cloth with the words, "Oof, what a nuisance off with it." He began to pace up and down the room naked. From the northern end of the room he brought an umbrella and a stick and asked us, "Are these yours?" Scarcely had I replied no when he said, "I knew it. I can judge a man by his stick and umbrella. They must belong to that man who was here some time ago and swallowed a lot of my words without understanding them." A few minutes later he sat down, still naked on the northern end of his cot, facing the west, and asked me, "Well, do you consider me ungentlemanly?" Myself, "Of course not. You are a perfect gentleman, but why do you ask me that?" Master, "You see, Shivnath and others don't think I am a gentleman. When they come, I have to wrap a cloth or something around me. Do you know Grace Goes?" Myself, "Which Grace Goes? The one who is in the theatre?" My master, "Yes." Myself, "I have never seen him, but I know him by reputation." Master, "A good man?" Myself, "They say he drinks." Master, let him, let him. How long will he continue that? Do you know Narendra?" Myself, "No, sir." Master, "I wish very much that you could meet him. He has passed the BA examination and is unmarried." Myself, "Very well, sir, I shall meet him." Master, "Today there will be a kirtan at Ram Datta's house. You may meet him there. Please go there this evening." Myself, "All right." Master, Yes, don't forget. Myself, it is your command. Shall I not obey it? Surely I will go. He showed us the picture in his room and asked me whether a picture of Buddha could be had. Myself, very likely. Master, please get one for me. Myself, very well, I will bring one when I come again. But alas, I never returned to Dakshineshwar. That evening, I went to Rambabu's house and met Narendra. In one of the rooms, the master sat reclining against a pillow. Narendra sat at his right and I in front. He asked Narendra to talk with me, but Narendra said, I have a bad headache today. I don't feel like talking. I replied, then let us put it off till another day. And that came to pass in my May or June of 1897 at Almora. The will of the master had to be fulfilled, and it was fulfilled after 12 years. Ah, how happily I spent those few days with Swami Vivekananda at Almora, sometimes at his house, sometimes at mine, and one day on the top of a hill with nobody accompanying us. I never met him after that. It was as if to fulfill the master's wish that we saw each other at Almora. I saw the master not more than 4 or 5 times, but in that short time we became so intimate that I felt as if we had been classmates. How much liberty I took while speaking with him, but no sooner had I left his presence than it flashed on me. Goodness gracious, think where I have been. What I saw and received in those few days has sweetened my whole life. That Elysian smile of his, laden with nectar, I have locked up in the secret closet of my memory. That is the unending treasure of a helpless person like myself. A thrill of joy passes through my head when I think how a grain of the bliss shed from that laughter has been sweetening the lives of millions, even in distant America. If that be in my case, you may very well understand how lucky you are. So, this completes the video number 59 and the complete Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna Parmahamsa. Thank you for watching this video. Namaskar, my dear friend.